Well, welcome into the Point After on the Oklahoma Sports Network, and we're so glad you could join us during this podcast. Podcast is being produced out of the Cameron University Podcast Studios, and I always give a thank you because first off, I really appreciate the studio with the camera and for the YouTube aspect of it, and the great mics and the road board and everything else that goes with it. So we appreciate that. Well, we are into basketball season on the fun time that we say a run to the state, the final 8, and who will it be across the great state of Oklahoma? And we're so excited to be a part of that, especially in the OSN family with our 13 schools. We've got some good representation, and we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to the state rundown. First and foremost, because we got regionals going on right now. We had some district last week with Bethany because they were a 4A school that had districts. Then we have regionals this week, which punches your ticket to area, and then from area it goes to state. So it's like, here it is. These next 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so is just going to be a mad dash of continual basketball. And we've got a lot on the network to include regionals, starting with girls. Just last night we had some of those great matchups. Saw another showdown between Altus and MacArthur. Altus came away another winner. Really interesting. This is for the girls. So what I'm talking about, Altus bumped MacArthur out, which they have made good runs in the past years with Otis Gentry's teams. And so they got booted out by Altus last year. So it was kind of a rematch up in Del City. By the way, Altus will play Del City in that district matchup for that area, or for that regional to get to area. But it's going to be an interesting showdown. But MacArthur came up short. It was kind of interesting that I think Altus was up by 8 to 10 points, and then MacArthur came back and was up by 5, and you know how basketball goes, and then you're down by 5, and then it's the end of the fourth quarter. So that's how the MacArthur Lady Highlanders ended their season. So I wish that we could have continued on, but the boys will be in action on Thursday. I will be over at Lawton High. They are hosting. They are a number 1, and so I will be covering the Lawton High Wolverines. We'll also have the MacArthur Highlanders covered, Midwest City, Del City, Carl Albert, all on the network, and Bethany as well. So we'll throw those in. And then we already mentioned Altus. Altus boys have yet to play, and the girls will play again against Del City. So if you want to find out who we've got up on the network, just connect to us socially on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and then download our free app. It's free to download, free to watch on the Oklahoma Sports Network, Apple and Android devices. So it's not just me this afternoon. We're going to have a special guest, Chris Evans, with us from the Guthrie News Page. And he was really great to help us during the football season, navigate through all that. And he's got the pleasure of hosting all of these, for the NFHS network. That will be plenty of great basketball ahead at the fairgrounds. One last year, I guess, for the Big House. And I've noticed the OSSAA's website, or they on their Facebook page, has been putting up old stories of classic matches and people that have gone on to different levels of college and even pro say this is the best arena for it. And I can't wait to see what the new arena will look like next year. It's right next door, so they've taken up some parking space, so get ready for that. And of course, the Oklahoma City traffic, as you and I were talking about. If you're from these smaller outlining areas getting to the fairgrounds, you may want to appropriate your time to make sure that you get there and park. So Chris, good to have you along. And basketball season, ready or not, are you ready for it?
I think so. And before we get too far into the hardwood, I want to say congratulations and applaud your staff. I watched your football show over the weekend. I caught the replay of that. I was busy that same night, but I got to tell you, job well done on the interviews. And I can imagine how much how much production work behind the scenes it takes to get to that moment. It might be a 60-second highlight, but it doesn't take 60 seconds to build that. And I thought you and your staff did a fantastic job of having your football show, annual show again. So much appreciation. I know how much work that is behind the scenes, but I know your member schools appreciate that, and the student athletes are recognized. So it looked like a good night down there from watching here in Guthrie.
Well, and I appreciate that. It was our 3rd annual. And as you know, on the back end, because you produce just as much as we produce, and I was setting up, and it was the DJ with the audio, and of course, Tedesco was there, so, putting out the tablecloths. And I just kind of looked around and said to them, I said, most people don't ever realize how much you have to put in to get these. But, I think the kids deserve it. And I think
Absolutely.
to make it a dress up night and they all come up in their nice suits and representing their schools and to kind of have that Heisman feel to it where you get some interviews and then, I'm glad, I'm grateful for all of our judges that help this, because if you've watched the show, the stats on these, and especially it came down to the newcomer rising star between Devin Woodring, Carl Albert's quarterback, and Ritzenmeyer from Elgin, running back, that had outstanding years. And it was a tie. And I actually had to recruit one other judge to break the tie. We've never had that formula before, but a nice night. You make it a dress up night, you make it a great appearance. And so hopefully we can build on. I noticed, I spied a little bit. I created 2 more categories this year that wasn't in the program. One was comeback game of the year, and that was Pryor and Newcastle to get to the semifinal game to play Guthrie. And that was a come from behind at the last second to win that. And then we also had most improved team in addition to player of the year, defensive player of the year, the newcomer rising star. We had an academic athlete, and then the coach of the year. And so I wondered, and maybe you can help me with this. I was thinking about maybe doing offensive lineman of the year, but statistically, how do you do that? I mean, pancake blocks, yes, I get that, but maybe you'll have to lean to the coaches to really kind of get a top 3 for offensive linemen, because I don't want to leave anybody out, because they're so evident in what they do.
It gets tough because they always say the games are won in the trenches. Well, it begins with the offensive defensive line, and they're not recognized unless they give up a sack or do something wrong. So I think that'd be good. I would say when I was watching your show, when it was the comeback of the year, I knew it was not going to be the Carl Albert Titans with the comeback victory of the year. I knew that was not going to be the case because they beat everybody by 80 points this year.
Well,
so
that's true.
I knew I eliminated one team in that category.
Or you could throw Elgin in there as well. I don't think Elgin trailed in any of their games. Whether either team was tested by giving them a little bit. I know Guthrie did a year before to Carl Albert and had him up against the ropes, and Carl Albert's Carl Albert, and they find a way in the last minute. That's why until you see zeros on that clock, will you be satisfied? Yep. And speaking of Carl Albert, we'll kind of transition into the hardwood floor now. Is that everybody kind of expected. El Reno only had one regular, this is what boys now we're talking about, one regular season loss on the season, and they closed it out with a game that didn't really matter. I mean, I should take that back. It does matter. It just didn't count. They weren't in the district, so it didn't really in that aspect, but it did for bragging rights. And they go up to Carl Albert, and Carl Albert comes out with a win against El Reno, who had only had one loss in the season in boys basketball. So and I'm a springboard into this, and we're going to talk about the smaller classes. And I want to really get that out as an educational thing of what to expect, who's going to be where in semifinals and whatnot. But I think I am more excited this year than I have been in a lot of years. And maybe I should say because there are a lot of OSN affiliates in there.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of great basketball, and we're going to talk with 5A boys and on the west side, and nothing against east side. I saw Tulsa Memorial briefly when they came down in December to play the 3 Lawton schools, and they had a little tournament there, and that was so long ago. That was like pre-Christmas and early December when football was still just kind of finishing up. But to say this, I mean, if you include the 3 Mid-Del schools, Midwest City, Del City, and Carl Albert, if you say Lawton High and you say El Reno, and if you throw in MacArthur in there as well, those are 6 very competitive teams that could make this run. And, when you say there's only 8 that go, who's going to be left out? And I think when you saw, like I saw Lawton High, they had that stretch, and we talked about this. They only had one loss in the season to Weatherford, and then they got a couple of losses that humbled them, which was a Del City, at their place that come back and win at the buzzer. Midwest City came back and beat them, in the second rematch. So they all have kind of neutralized each other by saying, we beat you and then you beat us, and so who has the leading edge? I think whoever gets hot, and you've seen this. Whoever can get hot right now is going to win it all.
Yeah, exactly right. And, you're able to see Tulsa Memorial. I was able to watch Booker T. Washington talking about the east side real quick before we go deep into the west side. But Booker T. Washington 14-0 in district play, 18-7 overall. I can tell you they're a good team. It's not the Booker T team that you envision in years past with height and just the very good athletes, but they're not what you have seen in the past. Doesn't mean they can't win a state championship. So, I think Booker T and Tulsa Memorial are the two teams, obviously on the east side. And then you get to the west side, the 6 teams that you mentioned there. And El Reno, they are fun. Coach Ronnie Hayden, they're always fun every single year. They get up and down the floor. They run outstanding sets. They usually score off of those sets. Romanos, the all-time scoring leader, he's there in his senior year. And then Carl Albert, they have 7 losses, but Carl Albert, like we see all the time, especially in basketball, they play the best of the best every single year. So they're going to have some losses on their win-loss record, but it's against high-quality opponents that get them ready for the state tournament this year. And so it's all about matchups, and you can beat number 1, number 2, number 3 in 3 consecutive games in the month of January. But now it's the month. Now we're getting to the end of February and 1st of March when it really, truly matters. And when those teams come together, we've seen teams with 500 records go into the state tournament and be competitive and sometimes win those games. So it's all about playing right now. And you got to lean heavy on those coaches who have been in those situations, like Carl Albert, Coach Price, and Ronnie Hayden, who have had those deep runs, know how to win when it really truly matters and get their team ready.
Yeah, and I was talking with Chevis Smith, Lawton High's head coach, and he said, I don't care how well we're doing in December, January. He said that's really, it doesn't matter. And coming from his experience at Millwood and winning a state championship, he knows what that run means. And he knows that, you can have that off night when you get past this little stretch that we're about to start. So girls already in it, had districts with some of the smaller schools. You can go to the OSSAA's website and see all of the rundowns of who plays what and where. But let's just get to the final when they reach you, where you're going to be at the fairgrounds at the big house. Let's start with, I think, Class B. This will be the smaller classes that will start first, and then we'll end in the 15th and 16th of March, I think, with 5A and 6A. So how is it looking? And then where they go to get to that point before they get, as far as the semifinals and how that looks?
Yeah, it's a little bit different this year. Obviously, Class 6A and 5A will be at the big house this year. So every basketball game outside of 12 games. So they're from Class B, the smallest, all the way to 6A, obviously the largest. There's 98 total games, and 86 of those will be played at the fairgrounds, and 12 of those will be at UConn. Class B state semifinals will be at UConn High School. Class 5A semifinals and Class 6A semifinals the following week will also be at UConn High School. But other than those 12 games, everything else will be at the state fairgrounds. This year, Class B, A, and 2A are together for the first week of state basketball championships when large schools are going through their regionals. And then the following week, you have 3A, 4A, 5A, and 6A all together at the fairgrounds, along with those at UConn as well. So 98 games, and I think that's a great thing. We've talked about this during football season with all the championship games at UCO. Now, not all of them in basketball, but a good part of them in one location. So regardless, every kid will get to take a warm-up or a shot or whatever it is inside the big house, which is a big deal, especially to the smaller schools. And it'll be interesting to see the big schools, your Carl Alberts and your Midwest Cities and Booker T playing in the big house instead of OU or OB or ORU or wherever it may be. So that will be fun to see that take place. But just real quick on the rundown, March 4th will be dedicated to Class A schools. So the boys will play the first session. The girls will play the second session, 4 games each. And then March 5th on Wednesday, the Class B teams will have it. Boys in the morning, girls in the evening session. And then Thursday, you got your 2A boys in the first session and 2A girls in the second session. And then you get into your semifinals where they'll all be played there outside of Class B girls or boys, girls, B boys and B girls at UConn. And then they all come back to the championship game with 6 games on March 8th. And it's kind of mixed in. It goes B girls to 2A boys to A girls, and how they come up with that formula, I don't know. But I do know this. It starts at 10 a.m. and the last game's at 8:30 on that first week, Saturday for state championship games. So it's a busy schedule, and it's one of those you have to kind of piece together. I have a fancy Excel sheet in front of me with different colors for different classes to try to keep up with it. without having to look at all the brackets. But it's always a fun time of the year. It's a busy time of the year. You're well aware of that. But it's always fun to see them all come together, as you said, for the final time inside the big house as we know it. And we talked a couple of weeks ago. We see the nice facility from the highway. I'm hoping we might be able to get a sneak peek of what it looks like maybe during a break session to go check out the new facility.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. I said, inquiring minds want to know, and you see it from the highway and it looks really nice. And I said, has anybody seen inside? And I thought, well, with your setup, maybe, hey, we'll give you a quick tour of how we're progressing and what it looks like. But everybody loves the new shiny penny. And I mean, it will be really something to be admired for some time. I love the investment of how they put this together for the fairgrounds, because I know the OSSAA has done a lot of video vignettes of people talking about the history of that building, and I know it's a little bit older, but what it stood for, what it meant for these communities. And, you couldn't help but just get caught up into it when someone says, hey, I've played at collegiate level courts. I've even played at pro courts, and there's nothing that compares to the big house. And so that really is nice. And the kids can respond to that. And with a new building, how much more will they add to that starting next year?
Yeah, and what you said was kind of echoed what you mentioned earlier, the OSSA pieces that they put on Facebook. I know they talked to Rodney Clark and Keaton Page. Of course, they had that fantastic showdown in the big house. But, they played at Arkansas and OSU, and they talked about Fog Allen and playing at Gallagher, Iowa. And they mentioned all these great college venues, but they can go back and tell you almost exactly what happened at the big house during our high school days. So it's obviously fun for us, but it's really special for those athletes to partake. And it's obviously something they remember. Again, Rodney and Keaton have played in these big games, but they remember their high school championships. So it's a cool deal. Can't wait to see the new facility as well. There's good and bad when you go transition to a new building, but for selfish reasons, I hope they laid it out perfectly for the media people as well. Not that we're at the head of the thought process, but if we can have some SDI cables outlets here or audio cables here, that would be nice too. So we'll see.
I've seen press boxes where they don't even open the windows, and I said,
yes, exactly.
A crowd mic available. I remember Putnam City North years ago had in their old stadium, they actually had at the bottom of your feet a little fenced in hole that you could put a mic out for a crowd mic. And I said, see, that's thinking about, and I love when they think with you and not after. Oh, I wished, well, you could have called us, you could have talked with us. I could have told you what we need. And especially in this video age, of what we're best position and the plugins. And so hopefully
I talked to Coach Dunn, Carl Albert football press box. They have these heaters underneath under the tables, which are fantastic, but I always have to tell our crew that we can't turn it on because cables will tend to fall, and we can't take a chance of melting our cables. But media people can be a little high strung at times.
A little bit, but and you got to be humbled, because when you watch some of the NFL broadcasts and that they got their parka coats on, they are still in the old venues with the open window bays for TV, and I don't care. If you are Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, you're outside. And so it kind of, humbles us to go, okay, we're some of that, but we're not all of that, And so even the pros have to, kind of set up with some of those. It's ideal when you get it.
Yeah, when I see Troy Aikman and I see the air off his hot breath, and it's like, it takes me for about 20 minutes to overcome. You know what? I'm sure he has an electric blanket and some heaters underneath, but it's still cold. It's still cold.
It's still the elements, So we've done some of those in the history lies with it. One other thing I was going to ask you. So we talked a little bit about the format and but you've kept your eye on some of the basketball. We've already mentioned a lot in the West. We mentioned a little bit in the East, and maybe there's a school. Is there something that you're looking forward to, that knowing what you've seen in the season by some of these teams that are making their way, that maybe you're excited to see? If so, who would they be, and who are you kind of looking for to kind of make a splash this year?
The one school that really I pay attention to is El Reno High School. They've had some really, really good teams. Coach Hayden's had some great teams. We've seen the girls have some great teams as well. Shawnee girls have had some great teams, but the El Reno boys have been so close to a state championship over the years. I remember they got to a final. I think it was maybe Booker T that handled them pretty well. And I don't know when the last time El Reno boys won a state championship. I don't remember one of recent time. And with me being in Guthrie, I'm very familiar with the Middle schools in El Reno and, the schools that Guthrie faces off often. And the El Reno fan base, really behind their school. And so I'm always, I don't say rooting, but always interested if El Reno can get over that hump. It's a very tough class though. You got a lot in schools that can get you. Your Carl Albert, Midwest City, Dell City can get you. And then Guthrie will have a good team every now and then that will win a state championship. Booker T, so it takes El Reno schools like El Reno and Guthrie to have one of their best schools or classes ever to win a state championship. Not disrespectful, not saying that Carl Albert didn't, but Carl Albert seems to have athletes every single year. Midwest City, Lawton's usually have those athletes, or Booker T, that gives them a chance every single year. Whereas Guthrie, El Reno, it doesn't come as often, but when they do come, you better take advantage of it. And that's where I come to answer your question. El Reno, for me, they have the talent, they have the player, star player, and Romanos to win it. It's they got to put it together.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Lawton schools, one of them being Lawton High, dropped down. So they were in the 6A realm, and last year they were a 1 seed and then got beat and had to go on the road, and then they kind of changed that formula. So, ADs were pulling their hair out. They say, man, we lost. We're hosting, and my team's on the road. I had a couple of them that actually had to do that. So that's kind of been erased, and so you take care of that.
It's just a reminder how big those area championship games are when the two top teams play in that one area. When the winner moves on, the loser has to go through to the other area game. Well, that messes up the bracket where you might have two good teams on one side, and they might be playing, like we see in football, a semifinal game that many people think the top two teams are on one side. So, but that's what makes it fun. I enjoy that.
It was like football this year with Carl Albert and Dell City, and they were looking ahead of time in the way that it reached out. They said, "Oh, you mean we got to play each other in the semifinals, not like the finals like the previous year?" I said, "Yeah, that's kind of how that shaped out."
And we talked about the momentum, playing good in January, but you want to play good in December or in March. But it's a reminder that you can also bring it down to a quarter. If you play 3 good quarters and 1 bad quarter, I mean, it can cost you the game. It's all about momentum, and those games in state tournament games are all about momentum and how you handle momentum, both positively and negatively. When the other team's on a 12-0 run and you're down 14 points, it's not over. You can still come back. It's just how you handle those momentum swings.
And one other thing, and this is the second year of it, and, hats off to OSSAA that works with the coaches, with modeling this when you have some kind of a change, like getting rid of the 1-and-1 bonus, with just having the 5, the 5 per quarter, and then you start over. And I've talked to the coaches. I always ask them, I said, so how is this going? How do you like it? And I think they've really adapted. They like it a lot better. One that told me, it said, oh, you don't have to carry that over into the next quarter. It's just, the slate is clean, where, okay, now it's another 5 fouls to get you to the bonus to shoot 2. And, it's supposed to, make the game a little bit quicker to move that pace along. It does take some strategy away from the coaches that use the 1-and-1 to their advantage. But, they've adapted. But I like that. That's the second year of the change with that. And I think that's been good.
Yeah, and I went to the NFHS Summer Conference a couple of years ago up in Seattle when they were getting ready to implement it for the first year last year. And there was a lot of back and forth on there. A lot of it was focused on the safety. That's one less free throw that bodies go crashing into the paint trying to get a rebound. So that's the other part they added in there. But yeah, I enjoy it too. It takes away the strategy of when you're down 3 or 4 and you got a foul and you missed the 1-on-1, then you had the chance to go down there. That kind of takes that little strategy away. But no, I like it as well. And it's kind of patterned off some, NBA has the limit and all that goes with that. But I think the next big one, and I know we need to get to the 5A, 6A schedule and down the 3A, but The next big discussion is when will the shot clock be put in, but that might be it for another day, another year.
Well, no, and I think the reason being is they talk about cost prohibitive. I mean, every one of these schools have to install it, and where are the funds going to come? And, bigger schools will say, we have no problems with it. We got great video boards during football. But you get to these smaller schools, that don't even have football, and that's all they've got. And you say, oh, wait, by the way, you're going to have to add a shot clock in. And I don't think it's that difficult, but that's the only thing that I've heard is cost prohibitive.
And I can tell you, in Guthrie, they got the shot clocks added in right now, just ready for that, when that happens. Yeah. When you go across the state, the large schools want the shot clock. The smaller schools don't want the shot clock.
And want to play stall ball, because if I can milk 2 minutes off this clock, by you just, passing, perimeter passing. And I know it's boring and the fans hate it, but it is a strategy. A couple of years ago made the news. What was it, a 4-2 ball game? Because they just milked the clock. I mean, that's just all they did,
A couple of things on that is we see at the state fairgrounds, the big house, there will be teams that will hold the basketball on their hip for 2 minutes. And you're like, as a broadcaster, as a guy keeping games on schedule, hey, we're going to make that 1:30 game on time, but that's not basketball. And so when people bring this conversation up, I ask the question, which one is worse, holding the basketball or letting the other team letting you hold the basketball? Which one is worse? Because you can go D them up and get the ball if you really want to, but the other team's taking the option of sitting there and watching it as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, now go back to how many games did you say is going to be at the big house total? Because
there are 86 games at the big house.
So my next question is more of a social question for you, because I know you say you start at this time of the day and you're there the whole time. Yeah. What do you do from not going insane, and what do you do for breaks, and how do you kind of decompress or get something to eat, or how do you arrange that with your busy schedule?
Yeah. So after I set up on Monday, the first games are on Tuesday. So I will get to the arena at 8:30 in the morning for a 9 o'clock game, and just assume hopefully everything turns on and works. And then we'll go 4 consecutive games, and then we'll have about an hour and a half break in between the first and second session. And then the last game starts at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. And so we're done hopefully at 10:30 and get everything ready for the next day. So I leave at 11. So get there at 8:30 a.m., leave at 11 p.m., go home, try to get some sleep, and wake up and do it again on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Take a break off on Sunday. When I mean take a break off, get the graphics ready for the following week on Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And you do get tired. You can't get tired because the further you go on in the tournament, the bigger the games are. And the bigger the games are, the better you have to be. But I bring snacks, and I do walk. It's kind of like when you're at the big house for a certain time, it's kind of like being in Vegas. You don't know if it's hot. You don't know if it's cold, sunny, 3 p.m., 7 p.m. You don't know any of that because it's just a big old building with lights that buzz.
Right. That's true. That's the nostalgia of it.
Fun. Yeah.
But, that way I wanted to peer back for those who are listening to the podcast. And someone would come up to me, by the way, I said, I recognize your voice because of the podcast. I said, I could not believe that. I said, you and one other person is because we're so new with this podcast, and YouTube has really helped us out because the more I put up on our subscription YouTube page, it gets out to a different audience. So those who have to put up with my ugly mug, because I do have a face for radio, but that's all I did for the longest time. But it is kind of, for those who really love podcasts. And I said, with my old long-standing radio background, I said, I can talk for 30 minutes. I have no problems with that.
Yeah.
So why not do it? And so I know you were doing this, and I want to peer back a little bit so people understood about the production aspect of it. We can just love as viewers and sit back and enjoy all that, but there is so much work and you've got an outstanding crew that does this and are committed to this. And that's a lot of hours, and that's a lot of good stuff.
Well, and Oklahoma Sports Network will have a big part of that as well, with state basketball production coverage as well, with the games in UConn. And those are huge games in UConn, particularly Class B. They're big as well, but you got 6A and 5A semifinals at UConn that you'll be in the middle of with not only the network schools that you have, but the big time basketball that will be there. And I certainly think people would recognize you and hear your voice because during your football banquet, I heard your numbers are approaching a million views. So whether they like you or not, they're going to get plenty of you. So congratulations on that as well. I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for OSN to get 1 million. Hopefully you got basketball state tournament, and
I don't think we'll do it this year, but I mean, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I've got basketball this tail end that will really get us a big jump. We got some soccer in the spring. And then, a shameless plug here. We've got OU lacrosse that's brand new to the network this year. So that will bring in a new audience of people. And then I'm excited to announce I-44 racing. Got 7 races slated. March 29th will be the first time. So as we say, sports is our middle name. If it's a sport, we want to try to do it. And so, trying to get to that number, that's going to be a goal, of course. I was just amazed that usually we would beat the previous year at the end of the year and it would really come close, but we didn't. We already surpassed it after football season. But when you consider 13 schools, 11 of them make playoffs and 5 of them are still playing in semifinals and 2 win state championships, that's pretty good.
Well, Eric, you got 13 teams. Go find 10 more teams. You're not that busy, so get 10 more teams and you'll go over 1 million easily.
I court anybody and everybody. So if anybody's looking for a home and would like the easy accessibility of what we offer, it's not hard to jump on board. So
absolutely.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, can I give you the rundown of the 5A, 3A? I can go through it real quick for you. So Monday, March 10th, the first day of the state tournament for the second week, it will be the 5A girls in the first session, 5A boys in the second session. And then on Tuesday, March 11th, the 6A girls will have the first 4 games. And then the 6A boys will have the last 4 games at the fairgrounds. Wednesday, March 12th is 4A day, 4A boys in the morning, 4A girls at night. And then on Thursday, March 13th, it's class 3A, boys in the first session, girls in the second session. And when I say sessions, the first session is 9 a.m., 10:30, noon, and 1:30. And then the second session is 4:30, 6, 7:30, and 9 o'clock. All those games, of course, at the fairgrounds. And then Friday turns into the state semifinals. And then Saturday, March 15th is the championship games.
Wow. That is a fun week. And mad dash for basketball, and there'll be plenty. And, it's those games that you love that go down to the wire. You probably have yours. And I remember one that was represented. We were doing an audio portion of this, the Eisenhower girls. And it was El Reno, because I'll never forget it. And I know Eisenhower, the girls went up and they hit it to go up by 2 with maybe 2.5 seconds left. I don't know exactly. Maybe it's 1.5, but it was really short. Yeah. And they called timeout. The Eisenhower girls were celebrating. And I was thinking as a broadcaster, okay, they've never won a state title. How do you, what do you say? You're kind of thinking of the words, not, do you believe in miracles? Kind of like what's been said.
Michael Stewart would say, fly, Eagles, fly.
Oh, that's true. You got that too. Del City does a fly, Eagles, fly. Their public address announcer does that. But anyway, so you have the timeout, and you can see this, you're just on the sidelines, right on courtside, and they call timeout, and they're kind of celebrating, kind of excited, and they're just pumped up. And I'll never forget it. And El Reno had to go full length. I mean, it was not a half court shot. I mean, and so they inbounds, but they had no protection at the girl at half court. There was, they just kind of let her go, and say a wing and a prayer, and she turned around and just right at the top of the key and threw it up, and it was kind of slow motion in my mind, because it was a good look, and I said, oh, that has a chance, and it went in, and it was her birthday, by the way. That young birthday, and they celebrated, and the bench that I saw over on the side that was just celebrating like maybe a minute prior was just devastated. And that's how basketball can be. And you don't say, do you really hope for that? Well, I mean, if you're just into great basketball, then you love them. I mean, if you don't really have a dog in the fight, but I hope that we see quite a few of those.
Yeah. 98 games. Surely we'll get a couple of buzzer beaters in that. We usually do as well. So you brought up one thing, maybe another, we talked about the future of basketball, high school basketball with the shot clock. The other thing always ask coaches, and almost all of them say, yeah, I like that, is calling timeout and getting the ball, advancing the ball to mid-court is another thing that most coaches like to have that, but another discussion another day. But
we'll negotiate that.
I know this. It's a lot easier to watch the basketball games as a fan without having your hometown playing or your favorite team playing, because you're just rooting for something exciting to happen, and there will be plenty of opportunities for that in the state tournament.
All right, and catch that on the NFHS network, part of the Oklahoma Sports, the OSSAA, and their rundown of the state and the final 8 for all these classes, and you will see if he's doing his walk or if he's going to get his snacks. Chris Evans from the Guthrie News Page will be handling that. So, all right, well, appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll talk again. We always have to talk sports in one way, and we'll include you, and I appreciate you joining us for today.
Yeah, I appreciate the time as always, and we will see plenty of each other in the next couple of weeks.
That's true. Just kind of like in the football season. Okay, Chris Evans from the Guthrie News Page, and that is another edition of The Point After on the Oklahoma Sports Network. You can catch us wherever you listen to podcasts, either Apple or Spotify, or on YouTube as well. You've been watching a presentation of the Oklahoma Sports